Hello and welcome back to another Official Vader video. This will be part 3 of my Star Wars Canon Timeline. Rise of the Rebellion will span the years between A New Hope all the way up to the Mandalorian TV show. I won't be covering the Age of comic series or Star Wars Adventures, as I previously mentioned in part 1 of this video series, but if you are interested in reading those, I suggest you do. They do have some good issues. For the Rebellion, you have the heroes. The 4 issues are Luke, Han, Leia, and Lando, and then for the villain side, you have a Jabba issue, a Tarkin, a Vader, and a Boba Fett one. Here we have the key. The timeline is years before or after the Battle of Yavin, which is going to be the starting point of our video today. BBY, ABY. The films, shows, and video games are represented with logos, short stories are in green, comics red, novels purple, and the additional events are in light blue. And now we'll fast forward throughout the timeline. I covered in the previous 2 videos with these last 3 slides, the Era of the Republic, the Reign of the Empire, and now we have Rise of the Rebellion, starting off with Episode 4, A New Hope. Now, as you see here on the screen, this is where it can get a little tricky for Star Wars fans. There is a lot of stuff going on. And if you just look at my screen right here, the chronological way of reading all this stuff is on the screen right now. So from a certain point of view, that's the 40 short stories based on A New Hope, all the way through. It goes down in chronological order all the way down to the Lando mini comic series. And I'll break them down by their format. So right now I'll talk about the Star Wars series, the Star Wars, the Darth Vader, and the Dr. Ephra ongoing series that just ended recently. The Star Wars series is 75 issues. The Darth Vader series is 25 issues. I highly recommend the Vader series. It's got some really cool stuff in there. I don't want to give away some of the major things that happen, but definitely recommend reading that one. And then Dr. Aphra ends with 40 issues, but I'll get to those later because those series got rebooted. The next series just takes place after the next movie, Empire Strikes Back. So then, once that is done, we can go back to the Certain Point of View story. Again, that is a story based on A New Hope. 40 short stories written by 40 different authors celebrating the 40th anniversary a couple years back, based on the first Star Wars film ever created. And then we got Smuggler's Run and Weapon of a Jedi. Those are another batch of short stories based on Han and Luke. And then we'll move down to a little bit to the novels, right in this line. We have Inferno Squad, which is a prequel to the video game Battlefront 2. If you are a fan of Battlefront 2, the campaign, and Iden Versio and Inferno Squad, I suggest you taking a look at this book. It is written by Christine Golden, who also wrote Dark Disciple, and I love her work. It's a very good novel, and if you're a fan of the Clone Wars, there's a character that makes their appearance in this book, and I kind of lost my mind when I read it. So that's very cool. And then Heir to the Jedi is not one of my favorites. It's written from Luke's perspective, and for some reason it just didn't hit me right. I couldn't read it because it felt too off. It felt weird reading what Luke was writing from his perspective in a whole novel. But if you're interested, if you like Luke stuff and you want to see what he was up to in that time period, you can check it out. And then we'll go down to the comic miniseries. So there's a Leia, a Chewie, a Han, and a Lando. They're all 5 issues each. Then we have Vader Dark Visions, which is a 5-issue miniseries. And then we have Target Vader, which is another 5-issue miniseries. The Dark Visions one is kind of its own thing. They're just like 5 separate stories based on Vader in this timeline, and then Target Vader actually leads into a future comic book, which will be called Bounty Hunters, which I'm getting into. And then the next one down the line is going to be Twilight Company, which is a book written by Alexander Freed, and it takes place around Empire Strikes Back. You actually see these rebels fighting on Hoth. There's a cool appearance by one of the main characters of the Star Wars saga. Won't say who, but you see them in this book just for a brief moment. And then flashing forward post Empire Strikes Back, the new rebooted Star Wars Darth Vader and Dr. Aphra series get their new fresh starts with an issue number 1. So the Star Wars series is written by Charles Soule, and the Darth Vader series is written by Greg Pak. I'm reading those right now. The Dr. Aphra series hasn't come out yet, but it's coming out soon. And Darth Vader has only 2 issues. Star Wars has around, I believe, 4 issues. I'm really loving those 2 so far. The Vader is really good, and Star Wars is really, really good too. And then Bounty Hunters is another one. It's a new ongoing comic series based on Bylart Valance, who is a new bounty hunter character, and then Boba Fett and I believe Bosk is also in there. And then we have Moving Target, which is a Leia short story. Just like Han and Luke got theirs, she has hers, and this is in between Empire and Return of the Jedi. I also like this one as well, and it tells you something how they get something in this that ties in with Return of the Jedi. And then finally getting to Return of the Jedi, you have Battlefront 2. The beginning of that video game takes place at the Battle of Endor, which is the end of the movie. And then right after that, we have Shattered Empire, which is the 4-issue comic miniseries. And I really love Shattered Empire. It's only 4 issues again. It's really short, but it's really awesome. I love the art. The stories are great. And it takes place right at the end of Return of the Jedi. You see Luke fighting Vader, and then it shows what kind of happens after that. And Poe Dameron's parents make their first canon appearance in there, Shara Bay and Cass Dameron. I love all the stuff with them. And then going down, we have the Aftermath trilogy and the Alphabet Squadron trilogy. Now, I'll talk about the Alphabet Squadron trilogy first, because technically it takes place before the Aftermath trilogy, at least the first Alphabet Squadron book, because the Alphabet Squadron trilogy is not completed yet. We just have Alphabet Squadron, which is the first book, and then Shadowfall is coming later this year, and then we're getting the 3rd book later next year, I assume. And then the Alphabet Squadron trilogy ties in with TIE Fighter, and those two coincide, and they're kind of like a crossover. So the TIE Fighter comic series, it's only 5 issues. It's kind of serves as a prequel to Alphabet Squadron. Then going back to the Aftermath trilogy, that trilogy was written by Chuck Wendig. I did like the trilogy. The first book didn't really get good reviews because people thought it was going to be something else. They thought it was going to be about Han, Luke, and Leia, probably after Return of the Jedi, and it was based on new characters, new planet, a new story. But then the second book, Aftermath Life Debt, you get Han and Leia is pregnant with Ben. And then the last one, Aftermath Empire's End, is pretty much the whole book is the Battle of Jakku. So that is when the Empire ends, and they sign the Galactic Concordance with the Rebellion, and the remaining fleet leaves and goes to the unknown regions. And that kind of ties in with, what we know later down the line in the sequel trilogy. Now, getting into Lost Stars, if you are a fan of romance, if you are a fan of the original trilogy, you are going to fall in love with this book. It was one of the first books I read after the first Aftermath book. I read Lost Stars. It is written by Claudia Gray, and it is beautifully well written, and you fall in love with the characters immediately, and it ties in with all the original trilogy movies, and it spans so many years. It starts as in 11 BBY during the reign of the Empire with these 2 kids, and the premise of the story is these 2 kids falling in love, and the boy ends up going to the Rebellion while the girl stays with the Empire. And then we have in 7 ABY, Last Shot. This novel was written by Daniel Jose Older. He's actually one of the authors, along with Claudia Gray, who will be doing the High Republic stuff, which will come out later this year as well. And he wrote this book, Last Shot, a Han and Lando novel. It takes place a couple years after Jakku, so the New Republic is just getting started. And we have baby Ben Solo in this book. He is 2 years old, and the scenes with him will make you cry. especially knowing now what happens with everything with Ben Solo, and there's some really good stuff in that book. Overall, it was okay. I really love the Ben stuff, and Haunted Land I do have some good back and forth as usual. And then that leads us all the way back to The Mandalorian. So that was a very rushed video. I wanted to just get every thing in there, and because there's a lot of stuff and it's all taking place within these couple years. And The Mandalorian is in 9 ABY, so that takes place 5 years after the Battle of Endor. And if you haven't seen The Mandalorian, definitely check it out. It's on Disney+. It's a great show. Can't wait for Season 2. It's coming out later this year. But that pretty much does it for this part of the timeline. And that's going to be it for The Rise of the Rebellion. Next week, we will cover the period between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, called The Age of the New Republic. If you're a fan of the channel, please like and consider subscribing. May the Force be with you, and I hope you all have a good one.